But again, we're keeping it all the way basketball. We got Scoop with us tonight. Scoop, we got to start with the biggest story in the league that came out this past week. Obviously, Russell Westbrook on his way to DC for John Wall and a first round pick. What were you hearing about this trade, and what's the overall reaction from everybody inside the league?
Well, I mean, the Wizards were a team that were of interest as it relates to what Russell wanted and what the Rockets were able to get for him. Ironically, the 2023 pick will actually be a pick that could come in handy. That is the year that if Bronny James does not, if the collective bargaining agreement changes and players are able to come out of high school once again, it would be something to pay attention to, look out for. But directly to your question about Russ and as well as John Wall, number one, it pairs Wall with former college teammate DeMarcus Cousins in Kentucky once again, and also really and truly it gives I guess Russell a fresh start. I think when you look at just over the last couple of years with the Oklahoma City Thunder, he requested out after Paul George ultimately left and went to the Clippers. It's twice that Russell has been able to dictate or pick which team he wanted to go to, and the Wizards did that for him. He didn't get along with Tillman Fertitta, I'm told. There were some questions just about political allegiance and really just fit overall with that team. It's possible Harden could still be on his way out, particularly with some of the things that have been said over the last couple of days just about training camp and but that could be due to protocol with COVID-19. But the Rockets kind of over the last few months, even during the playoffs, there were some things that were going on, like over the last couple of years. Mike D'Antoni, former head coach, his coaching staff was diminishing more and more and more. They took Irv Rowland, who was Harden's trainer and doubled as a development coach with the Rockets. They got rid of him. And then just over the last couple of years, things have just changed. And then, ultimately their GM left. I know that Jeff Van Gundy, as well as Steven Silas, son of Paul Silas. Silas is now the head coach of the Rockets, his first head coaching position. Those were some of the guys that were in the running. And, there were some things that went on behind the scenes as it related to, the direction and power and all of those things. And ultimately, the Rockets are shelved themselves. And it really kind of goes back to a few years ago during the NBA Finals, or when they had a chance to go to the NBA Finals when Chris Paul was the point guard. And they just, the last couple of years, they just keep losing players year by year by year. And, here we are now. John Wall is the point guard for the Rockets, but, Harden could be on his way out still. He requested a trade, and, the Nets are on the top of his list, as are the 76ers. The Boston Celtics have inquired.
I gotta go back for a second, Scoop. Because you brought up something, and we've been going through a lot in this country over the past couple of months. We recently just, we got through the election, even though the current guy in the office is still trying to contest it. But you said there was a little underlining reasoning in there of why Westbrook wanted out, and I'm from what I've heard, Harden kind of wants out for the same reason, and that's for Titta's support of President Trump.
Yes.
Okay. So all right. I wanted, because I know you posted that on your IG, so I wanted to get into that a little bit.
What do you want to know?
I mean, Scoop, I need to scoop. How accurate is that? Like, is that one of the main factors and why they both kind of want out of Houston?
And before you answer that, Scoop, really quick, because I want to double down on that, because I was going to go that same direction. So you have reported that, and then I've also heard that played into a factor why Daryl Morey requested his release as well. So if you can elaborate on that as well, if you have any inside info on that.
I spoke to Daryl a couple of weeks ago. We talked about everything but that. But as it relates to the Rockets at large, why are you laughing?
Well, we're laughing. I think Tripp and I both, we laughing about it because, the story has been circulating. He allegedly told Tillman that he wanted time off to spend with his family, and within 2 weeks he takes the Sixers job.
Yeah, I could, yeah. I mean, but the thing is with Daryl Morey, the Daryl Morey thing, from just different things I've seen and heard and read, the combination of all those, and the NBA is like a big puzzle. You read something, you talk to someone, you kind of fit that piece where it goes. But I think this Morey thing kind of goes back to China, and I think because he took that job in Philadelphia. And because COVID happens, I think some people get amnesia. The Rockets underperformed in the playoffs. And I think from what I have heard, Tillman Fertitta had interest in bringing in, at one point, Jeff Van Gundy. And Van Gundy and Morey go back to when Van Gundy was the head coach of the Rockets years ago, when Steve Francis was there, and then Grady came in, Yao Ming was there. I think that was going to be an oil and water type of situation. Steve Salas ended up becoming head coach. Morey got a better job as a team president in the Philadelphia 76ers. Personally, I think Philadelphia got better in the offseason by name. They still got to play and produce. But to me, Elton Brand is somebody who I feel like some have said has lost power, and I think I cannot nail that down. I have not spoken to Elton about that. But I think that Morey has relationships and has been around front office interworkings for a longer period of time. To me, Philadelphia would make sense if Philadelphia was looking to bring in Harden, because he has the relationship with Harden. The NBA is a relationship business. Now, as it relates to the Rockets and the whole political thing, as it relates to President Trump and just his Make America Great movement, I've heard that there are a lot of people who were turned off in Houston by just his public declaration. I mean,
was he wearing MAGA hats in the locker room? Is that?
I don't know that to be true, but I just I know he has publicly supported President Trump. Yeah. I know that he's made money. Versus maybe James Dolan, the owner of the Knicks, is a lot more quiet about it. But it's almost like, I grew up in the church. Maybe if you're sitting in the barbershop, there are people who don't want to hear you witnessing to them in the barbershop. They want to talk about sports and women. And maybe in that vein, comparatively, it may have been the same type of situation. So to your question, yeah, I mean, particularly in this climate, there are players who are turned off by it, but let's not act as if there are not many NBA owners who have donated to President Trump. If I'm not mistaken, I know James Dolan has. If I'm not mistaken, I know the Orlando Magic are Trump supporters. Tillman Fertitta is a Trump supporter, but I also think that's so layered for this reason. I have friends who are Democrats. I have friends who are independents. I have friends who are Republicans. We can agree to disagree on some things, but sometimes it's not even about the person who's in office. It's about their purse, their wallet, and their bottom line. And while they may not like that person, it fits their agenda of how they choose to live their life. So I think in this case it's different. I think Tillman Fertitta, just based off of what I've heard, I think it's a situation where it's both. I think he supports President Trump, and I think that he fits his bottom line financially. And I think that may have rubbed some people within that organization the wrong way. Plus the combination of the fact that, just over the last few years, there's just been a decaying of wins and skills and more. Chris Paul went on the greener pastures in Oklahoma City and daggone near beat the Rockets in the playoffs. Didn't happen, Game 7, I believe, but the Rockets ended up losing to the Lakers, and the Lakers played the Nuggets in the conference finals, and the Lakers won the championship, beating the Heat. So it just seems like over the years, I mean, even if you go back to the playoffs, very openly, Mike D'Antoni expressed that he had no interest in returning and re-signing with the Houston Rockets. So, that kind of shows you just where they were as a team morale-wise. And, here we are. I think I answered your question.
I got another question for you, Scoop. But let me say this really quick before I ask my question. I want to go back because the reason why I was laughing actually is because people don't want to give you the credit that you deserve. So I just like the fact that you light flexed on him. Yeah, I was on the phone with Daryl Morey, a couple times, and we chopped it up and whatnot. So no, because we like to give people their flowers while they here. So what I'm saying, like I gotta let people know, like you can't question Scoop, man. Scoop has been doing this for a very long time, and he's better than probably a lot of your favorites at his job. So I just want to give you, give you a little bit of props while we got you on the show. My question is, we saw how that situation, worked out with Westbrook and Harden. Do you feel like that's going to be a trend moving forward where players will not want to play for owners that I guess have a difference in political view?
I mean, that's no different than you or I if we work for a company and we don't agree with the views of your employer. You look for another job. The only difference is these are high-profile athletes that are brands outside of the corporation that is the NBA. I think to answer your question, perhaps. I mean, you look at how outspoken LeBron James has become about everything. You look at Kyrie Irving, who was expressive about the NBA bubble, and then when the shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin happened, everybody said Kyrie was right. So I think when you look at just where we are politically, I think the NBA, different than the other major sports where the players often do run the establishment, at least as talent goes. You could see it. I think that you're seeing it in New York in a different way with the Knicks, where marquee players are not wanting to play here. But I think the Knicks is a separate entity because you have seen in real time what happened with Spike Lee. You've seen in real time what happened with Charles Oakley.
Yep.
And then Carmelo Anthony, as a lot of these guys, is OG. And so I'm sure they go to him and ask questions, and there you have it. So it's like it's seen and unseen, this dialogue. I can tell you that, that's why Kyrie Irving ultimately did not sign with the Knicks. That's part of the reason why I won, because he wanted to establish his own identity as a team he grew up watching. And the Nets, who were in New Jersey at the time, and then, moved to Brooklyn, and you can create your own identity. It's like LeBron growing up in Cleveland and seeing Michael Jordan because he's in the Midwest, and Chicago is the Midwest, is New York. But he ultimately did not sign with the Bulls, and he went to the Miami Heat, and kind of established an identity with his friends that he came in the league with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. So I think when you talk about players, to your initial question about just choosing where they want to go and more, Kurt Flood was the blueprint as it related to giving players the option through free agency to do what they needed to do. So, I think that's a carryover to where we are today as a society with athletes. They have a bigger platform in the voice.
Yeah.
When I focus, this is your African King of Comedy, Michael Blackson. You watching Real Fans, Real Talk. Get real with it, my son.
This is Real Fans, Real Talk. Real Fans, Real Talk. We as real as you thought.